All right, so we're in the home stretch here. We're at question 28, and we have been asked to find an equation of the line described. Write the equation in slope-intercept form. Now, these last three questions on the practice test will be, admittedly, the three questions that will require the most amount of effort, the most amount of work, because what we're doing is we're being asked to write an equation of a line that has, in this case, two specific characteristics. The first characteristic of the equation of the line we're coming up with is that it has to have a slope of negative 2/3, and the equation we're coming up with, that line has to go through the point 0, 3/2. So using this information, the fact that we were given a slope and we were given a point, and we writing the equation of a line, tells us, those two pieces of information tell us that we have to use a special formula called the point slope form. So the point slope form is going to be the formula that we use when we're given a point and we're given a slope. That's where the name comes from. So, to reiterate again, if you've been given a point and you've been given a slope, you are going to use the point slope form. Now, what is the point slope form? Well, we've looked at it in class, and you will recall that the point slope form is y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times the quantity x minus x sub 1. So now that we know what we're doing, we're coming up with the equation of a line, and let's not forget our final answer we have to write in slope-intercept form. So our final answer has to be in y equals mx plus b, but we'll look at that as we get to the end. So again, let's identify what key pieces of information we've been given. We've been told that the line we're coming up with has to have a slope of negative 2/3, and it has to go through the point 0, 3/2. And as I said in class, I would get in the habit of, once you've identified your slope and you've written down the point you're working with, go ahead and label your point x sub 1, y sub 1. And now that we've got our m, our slope, we've got our x sub 1, our y sub 1, the point we're working with, all we have to do is plug that information, those three pieces of information, the m, the x sub 1, and y sub 1, into point slope form, and then arrange the equation in such a way that it matches what we're being asked for, in this case, slope intercept form. So let's go ahead and do that. So y minus y sub 1. Well, we don't have a y, right? We have a y sub 1, but that's not what y is. So in this case, we're going to bring down the y, minus, and what's y sub 1 based on how we labeled our point? Well, y sub 1 is 3/2, so we'll plug that in, and we set that equal to m, slope. Well, we definitely have a slope that was given to us, so instead of using m, we'll actually use the given slope, times the quantity x minus x sub 1. Well, let's see, what is x sub 1 based on how we labeled our point? Well, x sub 1 is 0. So all we did here was we took the given information, these characteristics, and plugged them into point slope form. So now let's go ahead and clean up this equation. We'll do some distribution and see where we're at. So here on the left-hand side, we can take that negative, distribute, and we know that a negative times a positive will give us a negative. So we have y minus 3/2 is equal to negative 2/3. And before we deal with this negative 2/3, I'm going to clean up what's inside this set of parentheses. And you can see here when we distribute, we're going to end up with an x minus, well, when we distribute this negative, we end up with x just minus 0, don't we? And of course we know, what is x minus 0? Well, x minus 0 is just x, isn't it? Because when you add or subtract 0 from some value, the value that you start with doesn't change. So this is where we are right now. And if we clean up one more time, let's finish our distribution. We can take this negative 2/3, distribute for the final time to this x, And so we have y minus 3 halves on the left is equal to, well, negative 2/3 times x is just negative 2/3 x. And in class, we dealt with examples where you would have to clear your fraction and then clean up the equation. But in this case, look how nicely everything worked out. We're trying to get this equation, this y minus 3 halves is equal to negative 2/3 x, into slope-intercept form, meaning we want to get the y all by itself. So yes, there are equations in this, or rather there are fractions in this equation, but we don't have to clear them, because in order to get this equation here into y equals mx plus b, look how easy it is. All we have to do is move this constant, this negative 3 halves, we move it from the left to the right by adding it. So as soon as we add 3 halves to both sides, here on the left, well, we can see that negative 2/3 plus 2/3 is now gone. So the only thing remaining here on the left is this y equals, and here on the right, we're going to have that negative 2/3 x, and we just added 3 halves to this side, and so there we have it, our equation in slope-intercept form. So when we were given a slope of negative 2/3 and told that the line goes through the point 0, 3 halves, when we put it into point slope form and simplify, clean it up, we end up with y equals negative 2/3 x plus 3 halves. So let's go ahead and for this equation, let's type in our final answer. So the equation of the line is y equals, so let's not enter that part. I know it's a little hard to see once these buttons popped up. All we have to do is enter the right-hand side of this equation. So we're going to say negative 2/3 x, and we can use this fraction button here. So if we click on that button, you can see that we've been given a blank fraction. So we can type in the 2/3 part, and then I'm going to arrow over. So on my keyboard, after I'm done with my denominator, I'm going to hit the right arrow, and that's going to bring me out of the fraction. And I can type the x plus, and again we can use that fraction button and type 3/2. Alright, so there we have it, number 28.